Hello and welcome to Driving According to Eddie. I'm going to be your instructor for this, which is essentially how to perform 3 different evasive driving manoeuvres. These are the Bootlegger's Turn, the JTurn and the Handbrake Turn. All of these manoeuvres are designed to help you evade either obstacles or pursuers. And they all work on the basis of turning a car in a tight spot. You see, the problem is if you're driving at any kind of speed, when it comes to turning, it can be very difficult to move a car around quickly. So if you're trying to get away from someone, or if you need to avoid obstacles, and you're already travelling at speed, then these techniques are vital. There's a big crossover with rally driving in these techniques, because rally driving is essentially using the same ideas to get the fastest route through a winding course. The whole principle of these manoeuvres is to rotate the car in a small space quickly. So we're going to have a look at a bit of the theory and the physics that go behind rotating a car, and what I mean by rotating a car. We're going to look at the procedures themselves for how to execute a bootlegger's turn, a J-turn and a handbrake turn, and then a video demonstration of what it would look like while you're in the car. It is worth bearing in mind different cars will act in different ways. Longer cars, such as long saloons and estate cars, will rotate more slowly and the manoeuvres will be much slower. However, they are heavier, and that means that it will potentially cause more tyre wear, and if they've got bigger engines, then it may, while you're learning, potentially damage the gearbox and such. Smaller cars, which are lighter, tend to incur less damage, but everything happens quite quickly, which in a sense makes them a perfect practice car, because if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. What? Am I a professional driver? No, I've learnt these myself, which means that if I can do it, you can too. 2 terms that we're going to be using are centre of gravity and weight transfer. Now the two are connected, and you've probably heard them both before. But let's have a look at them in the context of a car. Now you're probably aware of the fact that a lower car has got a lower centre of gravity, and that means it's more stable, whereas a higher vehicle has got a higher centre of gravity and therefore is less stable. But what does that actually mean? Imagine the centre of gravity as being a point, a single fixed point, and it's in the middle of the car. So in this car, if you imagine it's sort of between the 2 front seats, maybe where the armrest would be. That's approximately where it would be. And imagine it as being a point. And that is the point around which the car can rotate. You see, we all know that as a car goes into a corner, it'll slide from side to side, and it'll roll. Accelerate hard and it'll sit back on its back wheels, brake hard and it'll nosedive. What's actually happening is that the car is pivoting. It's actually turning on that centre of gravity. Why is it turning? Well, the car has got weight, and as you accelerate, brake or turn, the weight shifts around. So as you accelerate, what's happening is that the weight is moving to the back because the car is rotating backwards, so there's more weight force on the back. As you brake, the weight moves forwards because you're rotating around and the weight force pushes down. Same with side to side. The weight shifts as you turn. It's rotating the car. So why is this important when we're talking about evasive driving? Well, weight transfer is the process by which you can move the weight of the car around, and it can be our enemy or it can be our friend. Imagine you're driving a car with no anti-lock brakes. You hit them hard in an emergency situation. What happens? The wheels lock and you skid. Why is that? Because all the force of the car is going forwards, and then suddenly you hit the brakes. The brakes got a lot of stopping power, and all the weight is moving forwards. So you've got a lot of pushing forwards. Suddenly the wheels are made to stop. They break friction with the tarmac, and you skid. So how do racing drivers manage it where they come up to corners so fast and slow down so rapidly? What they do is they transfer the weight of the car. So you're driving a car without anti-lock brakes. You press on the brakes, but not too hard, just enough to make the nose dip. What you're doing is you're rotating the weight around the centre of gravity, so the weight is pushing down on the front wheels. Keeps more friction to the tyres, so the brakes don't lock up. As the car keeps braking, it dips further and further down. You can press the brake harder and harder and harder. So you start up and you squeeze on the brakes, and the car dips, but the wheels don't lock. That is weight transfer in action. This is useful to us, because if we transfer the weight to the front, or to the back, or even to one wheel in particular, we can make the car grip at one end, lose traction at the other, and thus rotate the car around one or other sets of wheels. And this is how we perform our evasive manoeuvres. The first manoeuvre we're going to look at is the bootlegger's turn, so called after the bootleggers who used it to get away from the police. What you're trying to do is to take your car from one direction and turn it round in the space of 2 lanes into the other direction, so you can get away quickly. How are you going to do that? It's a case of transferring the weight forwards onto the front wheels, which are going to have traction, locking the back wheels with the handbrake, and rotating the entire car around the front wheels. So, how do you do it? You get up to a suitable speed, about 20-25 miles an hour is always good. Lift off the throttle. All of these techniques start with lifting off the throttle. This shifts the weight towards the front, because the engine braking will slow the car just a little bit and just set that weight transfer up. Then you steer into the corner. Steering naturally slows the car down, so that weight is transferred even further to the front and to the outside. It's at this point, once the car starts to move, you hit the handbrake. The handbrake locks the rear wheels, but the front wheels still have grip, so the car slides around the front wheels. Naturally you lose momentum, so you'll come to either a complete stop or a very slow speed, at which point you can pull away in first gear. For the bootlegger's turn, you need to get up to 25 miles an hour, about 40 kilometers an hour. Then lift the throttle, clutch in, fight the instinct to brake. You will probably want to. If you brake, the whole thing will go wrong. Instead, keep your foot down on the clutch, your right foot off the throttle, and just turn. Once the car starts to turn, handbrake. Get it on nice and hard, and the car will begin to rotate. Again, just keep your foot down on the clutch and foot off the throttle. Once the car's pointing in the right direction, release the handbrake. You may have come to a stop, or you may be at a relatively slow speed. Then straighten the wheels up at the same time as you shift into first gear. So with your right hand you're straightening the wheels, with your left hand you're shifting into first gear, and then it's clutch up, power away. So, bootlegger's turn, let's see how it's done. Remember, it's going to be driving up to about 25 miles an hour, clutch, turn, handbrake off, straighten up, and away in first. Now, it's all going to happen quite quickly, so watch what happens. I'll do it a couple of times. Here we go. Up to about 25, and clutch brake turn, and pull away. Like I said, it happens quite quickly, so I'll show you again. We're going to get up to 25 miles an hour, put the clutch in, turn, and handbrake in almost like one fluid movement. Okay, so here we go again. Let's get up to about 25 miles an hour. And then clutch brake turn, and pull away. And it's as simple as that. The second manoeuvre that we're going to look at is the JTurn. This one is quite similar to the bootleg turn, except you're doing it in reverse. You're still trying to change the direction of the car, but in this case you'll have come to a stop and you want to get away from that thing quickly, so you reverse and spin the car around to go off in the opposite direction. For this you need to speed up in reverse and then lift off the throttle. That causes the weight to move to the back of the car. Then clutch in, turn the wheel by approximately one full rotation. Don't brake. You want the wheels to all be spinning, because that allows the car to spin around the rear axle and take you forwards, whereas if you brake you just end up going straight backwards and you don't get the full turn in. So reverse, reverse, reverse up to about 25 miles an hour. About 3 seconds in reverse is a good time to aim for. So foot hard down, 1, 2, 3, lift off, weight transfers to the back, spin the wheel. The front, which has lost traction, rotates. The rear, which has got traction because the weight's transferred to the rear, pulls you round. Then when the car's pointing in the right direction, you put the power back on, catch the car in the slide, I mean you might get a bit of a wiggle, and you pull away. For the J-turn, you need to start with your arm across the steering wheel. So your right arm at about the 8 o'clock position on the steering wheel, as you can tell by the beautifully drawn arm. And you have your hand on the gear stick. Not on the handbrake, but on the gear stick. So, you reverse for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Don't turn your head, use your mirrors. You'll see why later. Lift off the throttle. Once your foot's off the throttle, it shouldn't do anything until the end of this manoeuvre. So lift off the throttle, left foot on the clutch, and then turn. And you're going for as much of a full rotation as possible. That's why you've started from the 8 o'clock position, so you can go whoomph. As the car is sliding, shift from reverse into first. You might crunch the gears, some gearboxes don't like it. Don't worry if that's the case. Remember, you're trying to get away from someone. It doesn't have to be elegant. Once the car has got to a position where you're looking through the windscreen and you can see where you're going and where you want to go, that is when you lift the clutch and get the power on. That's why you haven't turned your head, because as soon as your head is pointing in the direction you want to go, power on and straighten up the wheel as you go. You'll do this naturally. So this is the J-turn. Start with your hand on the other side of the wheel, and it's going to be reverse for 3 seconds, then clutch, turn, don't brake, move into first as the car is rotating, and when you're ready, pull away. So, let's give it a go. 1, 2, 3, clutch, turn. And there we go. So I'll do that one more time. Or maybe I won't. 1, 2, 3, clutch, spin, first, and pull away. Key thing is, don't brake and don't overthink it. The final manoeuvre is the handbrake turn. Now the handbrake turn is where you're going to get your biggest crossover really with what goes on in the world of rally driving. It's the same sort of idea though as evasive driving. You're trying to rotate the car quickly so you don't lose speed and so you can keep up your pace. A lot of rally schools do now suggest that if you're doing a handbrake turn, it's probably because you've come into a corner too fast. But that's sort of the point with evasive driving, that you want to keep the speed up. And what you're trying to do is to rotate the car around the front wheels. So rather than going into a corner fast and coming off, because the weight of the car carries you through, you're rotating the car around the point. So, you're coming in. Now this is the only one of the manoeuvres where you need to brake a little bit. So you need to get up, perhaps up to 25 miles an hour, and then just a little bit of braking to bring you down to about 20. Then, clutch, turn, and then as soon as the car starts to shift, handbrake. Unlike the bootleg turn, once the car starts to slide, that's the point that you release the handbrake. Because you want to allow the car to slide in a controlled manner. So the handbrake is released, but the centre of gravity has transferred the weight to the front, so you're still going to pivot around the front. Once the car ends up pointing in the correct direction, that's when you lift your foot off the clutch, get the power on, and you pull away. So you come in, power, 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 then a bit of braking to transfer the weight down to the front. Turn in, clutch, handbrake, release the handbrake once the car starts to slide, so the whole car can slide. Now it's pointing in the right direction, foot down, and off you go. Now, if you're talking about rally driving and loose dirt surfaces, of course, the evolution of this is the famous Scandinavian flick, which involves weight transfer from one wheel at one corner of the car to one wheel at the other corner of the car. It's quite an advanced move, and it's no good for evasive driving unless you're planning to be evading people on the dirt. For the handbrake turn, this is the one where you are actually going to be doing some braking. So once again, get up to about 25 miles an hour, 40 kilometers an hour. Lift off the throttle and then tap the brakes. You don't want to brake too much. All you're doing is moving that weight further forward. You shouldn't dip below about 20 miles an hour, 35 kilometers an hour. Then it's clutch in, turn, and handbrake. Kind of like the bootlegger's turn. The difference though is that once the car starts to slide, you release the handbrake. It's once you feel that those rear wheels lose traction, release the handbrake. Don't worry, the car will keep rotating around its front wheels because of the weight transfer you did. Then, as you come to the direction that you're looking for, straighten the wheels and power at the same time. You'll probably find that you straighten the wheels instinctively. The key thing is, once you're going in the direction that you want to be going in, that's when you get the power on. You probably won't need to change gear if you've done this right and you've come in at the right speed. You may need to drop to first, but you should be able to do it without doing so. Now, if you're in a front-wheel drive car, strictly speaking, you don't always need to put the clutch in. You can just lift off, but it's a good habit because if you're driving a rear-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive car, you will need to put the clutch down in order to lock the back wheels with the handbrake.
Finally, handbrake turn. Very similar to the bootleg turn, except you're trying to keep up momentum, so you do things a little differently. Brake a little bit going into the corner to move the weight forward. Then it's clutch, turn, handbrake just as normal. Once the car starts sliding, release the handbrake. So that's a bit different to the bootleg turn. And then once the car's pointing in the right direction, release the clutch and steer back so you're pulling away. So let's give it a go. The ground's a bit dry, so we'll see. Okay, so a bit of braking out. That was okay, but let's see if we can do it better. So, let's get some more speed up, and a bit of braking. There we go, that's more like it. Now that one's more tricky to do because you're trying to keep up speed and momentum, so it will take a bit of practice. But like all of these things, it's about getting the speed down and rotating the car and not rushing it.
So there you go, there's your demonstration, at least in theory. Next stage is to put it into practice yourself. Now remember, if you are going to practice this, make sure that you do it on private land, not on the public roads, and get the landowner's permission. It will take practice to get these manoeuvres right, so it's not a bad idea to start on gravel or on very wet tarmac. If you're going to do it, remember to keep your speed down to the speeds that I've recommended, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to put an extra bar of pressure in your tyres. It helps you to slide more, and it'll prevent them from blowing out. Most importantly, don't put anyone else at risk. If you want to give this a go, and you damage your own damn fool neck, that's your liability. But keep away from the innocent public, and make sure that you're doing it somewhere safe, where you've got good visibility. So, if you've got any questions or comments, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching and enjoy yourself. See you next time.